could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her, and it's scary, sadistic stuff. I mean, it comes very close to the camera. You can see the person and you can see what they're wearing, something pretty distinctive, and there's photos 12 hours earlier, a person at the house wearing the same thing.
Video from David's most recent Tesla relocation, which took place on July 29th before he embarked on tours, has been acquired by private investigator Steve Fisher. Celeste's body was most likely within it when it was transferred. Additionally, Steve Fisher claimed to have been able to identify the driver. We also found a second rental house that David was using to hide Celeste, and it seems likely that this is where he killed her. In fact, an arrest might be imminent, and he found out that they were planning to either hide her body or dispose of it in a cruel way. This is really crazy. Well, let's get started.
But I will say this, there are some things that, and I'm talking physical evidence that was at that house that is, there could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her, and it's scary, sadistic stuff. And that's why we're trying to learn more about that. I wish I could say more, but for obvious reasons I can't. But it doesn't have to do with how she died, but maybe how they were planning on ultimately getting rid of her, and how maybe that Tesla was just a holding spot at the time, and things just, their timing was just off as far as getting this done. But there's a few things that were just like, will blow your mind. There are some other items that were found at the house that weren't taken during the search warrant. And, search warrants are limited, right? They can't just go take everything. It's what the judge, and we don't know how broad that search warrant was because we haven't seen it, and that's what we'd like to see. But there were some things that were not taken into custody of LAPD that we think are significant, and including digital media and some other things that really help nail down timeline and things like that.
In case you were unaware, David Fisher, a private investigator, was employed by the owner of his rental property in Hollywood. Of course, he has this incredibly rich and opulent mansion in the hills, which is why he hides him. Additionally, the resident was discovered inside his trunk with a dead girl. He wants to know what happened in order to, I suppose, safeguard the house and possibly protect its worth. Has anything occurred within the house that he could report to the next renter or buyer? And it's obvious that this man has been working for the FBI in an insane manner. He claimed to have evidence that they had used sadistic tactics to try to conceal it or get rid of her. So I just showed you all the video. My theory is that earlier in the video, he claimed that the homeowner had presumably returned to the house, and that the police had discovered items that they had neglected to confiscate, which perplexed them as they ought to have done so since it would have aided their investigation. I'm assuming that once David walked out, they might have discovered weapons, blades, or substances that dissolve the body, such as the unique scientific components you see in shows like Breaking Bad. And because the police didn't take those, the homeowner or the private investigator was able to allege that they had evidence that they had sadistic ideas on how to get rid of her. Because the Pi stated in the video that it appeared to be extremely hurried, it also makes logic. If you were dating or grooming a female, why would you put her in the trunk of your registered vehicle? Most likely, that body wasn't meant to remain there. They most likely had intentions to get rid of it, but they never got around to it because of the tour.
I've seen the car driven to that spot, and with the dates, with the date that it was, they left town right after that. I'm certain that is the last time the car was driven. It was put there with her, in the front trunk.
And there's one weird detail about what you could, well, there's a lot of weird details, and I'm going to get to what you saw through the driver's side window in a second, but there was an air freshener that was found in the car at this point that we see on our screen, where it was abandoned. Was that air freshener also hanging from the rear view mirror when it drove off from David's house?
It wasn't, but the window was half to 3/4 of the way down, which is odd because it was a very short drive. And also at that, on that day, this is the very end of July 29th, it was like 78 degrees at that time in the morning, or 77 degrees. And if it was on the street where the house is, so it's shaded by the house. So, if you're going, I don't know why the window would be rolled down unless there's something, offensive there. And then all of a sudden, one of the first things I picked up on when the news first broke about her being found in there, where they were towing the car away from the impound lot to LAPD, was why on a $104,000 car is there a Christmas tree air freshener hanging from the from the mirror? It seemed kind of odd to me, but I guess maybe they thought that would help mask it for when they had to move the car again.
But talk to me about the date of this video, July 29th, and talk to me about what you saw. What did you see in terms of the identity of the person driving through that open window?
So it's very clearly that Tesla, one, because the Tesla has that tape on the rear spoiler for whatever reason. I don't know why it's there. And also, it was just like it is in that picture. It was that dirty, except you could tell that they had run the windshield wiper like once to clear the dirt away so they could see. And it comes very close to the camera, although there is some motion blur, but you can see the person and you can see what they're wearing something pretty distinctive. And there's photos that I have from 12 hours earlier, a person at the house wearing the same thing. From the time the Tesla was left there, he literally immediately started the tour. There was a tour bus that was leased, and I'll tell you that Tesla was moved and literally a bus departed for tour.
The next topic the pie covered was how he was searching Beverly Hills or Hollywood Hills, where David resides, and he was able to locate CCTV and identify the driver of David's Tesla. It appears that they went on tour on July 29th, 2025, which is when the car was last moved. In the clip I'll include, you'll hear it. The automobile was actually moved before they embarked on their tour. The coach was present. They made their way. Our theories about who this was are excellent, but I'll discuss them later in the video since I want to provide the facts first. Then, we can discuss theories and other related topics. It's strange because the automobile had an air freshener when it was seized. According to Steve Fisher, who also stated that the driver was driving around with the windows down and without one, perhaps it stank. So did the driver roll down the window. It was 78 Fahrenheit that day, according to Steve Fisher, which I consider to be European. 26 is that. Now, I would think that's very hot. Although it's not extremely hot, it is quite warm. The day is bright and sunny. Thus, perhaps that was the reason I had the windows down. I believe it to be a good excuse, you know? However, some claim that he had the windows down since the car smelled awful due to Celeste's body inside. The fact that the driver is the last person to move the automobile makes me think it's absolutely insane. This pie is most likely going to provide the cops this proof. Additionally, I believe that an arrest may be imminent. Now, I say that, but it might take longer because the police still need to form a case and gather a lot of evidence. On the other hand,
that's another thing that I think could be key in this is that there's only one key to that house, and who had that and who had access to it and who was in it, because we also have evidence that while David was on tour at the time between the Tesla being found and the search warrant being served, David was on tour, but somebody was in that house. And there was actually a report made, not with police, but that homeowner association has a robust private security company, and we've gotten videos from them and reports. And so who had that key is probably the same person that, had access to the Tesla.
His statement that there was only one key to the residence is intriguing to me because it implies that there isn't more than one key, which prevents many persons from entering and leaving. That's what the homeowner stated now. David might have produced a duplicate key or, cloned the original. Additionally, he claimed that David's Tesla was accessible to someone who lived at the residence while David was on tour. It appears that several people are involved, which is when things start to become strange. David had an accomplice, perhaps not many, but
when
certainly
it was
one.
moved to that position, it was already like that. So that car had not been used in a very long time. It was super dirty, caked on dirt. I'll tell you, this was in late July. So it's bizarre because we also got media that the car was used a lot. David even spoke about it in Instagram videos. He took it to a detail shop and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, the very beginning of the year, that car, something happens, and that car's doesn't show up anymore. It's not used. It seems to disappear. And then that red Tesla learned, which we didn't know until the search warrant was served, that there's a red Tesla in the garage, which I can tell you was leased on February 1st. I'll say the last photo that we have of Celeste is January 2nd, 2025.
Okay, now that's significant because we were wondering when, she was last seen alive. There was that surveillance footage of her seemingly running away from her neighborhood.
And that was September of 24, I believe. So we didn't have anything. We were like, where was this girl in 2025? But we do have a photo of her on July 2nd, early in the morning, July 2nd, 2025. I tend to believe it happened a while ago, a long time ago. And I think January, February, things change. I mean, you can see it in the photos and everything. And I also...
The strangest part is that David left his black Tesla in January since he wanted to lease a new one, and the tags were either expired or, I believe, a registration. According to Steve Fisher, things seem to alter in January and February, and Celeste's January pictures are the last ones we have of her. They're obviously implying that she was murdered at that time, if I may say so. David gave up on his black Tesla somewhere in January or February. The red one was the new one he leased. Additionally, we last saw Celeste in pictures in January. Had she passed away since then? That would be completely crazy. I mean, this girl couldn't have been dead for 8 months. There is no way a person can remain alive for 8 months. If it is, you know, hidden dead for that long. By the time September arrives, the body will undoubtedly be gone and reduced to nothing but bones. However, it's strange that David leased a new Tesla instead of keeping his $100,000 model. Additionally, the last time we had images of Celeste and David was in January. My head is genuinely hurting from this case. That this pie is unable to identify the driver is really unfortunate. However, I suppose it's a good thing because it means that there won't be a media circus and the police can just start their investigation without having to have news, conferences, or anything. Therefore, in those YouTube videos, the private investigator also made a passing reference to his other home, when viewers also believed he had one. Didn't go all the way into it though. Let me read this tweet to you all. The private investigator working on David's case believes Celeste Rivas passed away in January or February of 2025 at a different residence he rented, which is located a mile down the same street where she was discovered. He also suggests that the Tesla might have been moved by David's pal Neo. A Redditor has now shared evidence that David was renting out 2 different residences. Evidence that David continued to rent a second apartment in Hollywood while renting his first, Celeste's hidden hiding place. In reference to the previous post on his first rental property, why wasn't it searched? Did he keep Celeste here when he was on tour outside of the state? Was this address the actual location of the incident? 1 mile down the street from where she was eventually located, it's practically the same one. And this is that second property's bathroom. They have the painting, as you can see. And the painting on the pictures is this one. David can be seen there on Celeste's TikTok. Good. Yes, this is the same place. This demonstrates that she was at his house when it happened. There's another image of the property too. Here, they streamed live from the kitchen. It was approximately 3 a.m., I recall. The kitchen of that second hidden rental unit is shown here. More about the bedroom. Oh my god, the paintings above the bedroom are also there. Additionally, this resembles the stock photographs that were used to advertise the house. In front of those identical paintings, you can see Celeste and David in the bed behind them. As you can see, David's estate in the Hollywood Hills is just a few minutes away. A drive of 4 minutes. Or, yes, a drive of 4 minutes. The distance between the rental properties is just 4 minutes. The Dini house is barely 3 minutes away from Bluebird Avenue, where the automobile was last parked in late July. The property listing is available here. The live stream took place in this kitchen. They were photographed standing in front of the same painting, which is in the bathroom. This is crazy. Wow. David was most likely concealing Celeste in their second hidden property. In fact, a complete TikTok is displayed here. This is the bathroom, of course. David in front of the bathroom art. Some are simply claiming that this was most likely an Airbnb, but once more, he may have needed a place to hide Celeste. So he booked this Airbnb or this house or apartment to do so. Because once more, this 13-year-old child could not have been living with him when he had his manager and entourage in the house. I mean, I hope the LAPD looked into his apartment because they would be losing out on a lot of evidence if they didn't. David most likely concealed evidence there as well. Furthermore, I wouldn't be shocked if she passed away at this home. Now everything is beginning to make sense. Naturally, he won't murder her in his multi-million-dollar Beverly Hills home in Los Angeles. In the small Airbnb they were renting, where he was hiding her just down the street, he will murder her. Since David is well known, please share your thoughts in the comments section. He most likely had a sizable entourage, had many pals that lived in that house. It was described as a party house. I don't really want to mention names because, as you may know, these innocent folks might not have known. On the other hand, David had many close friends who either worked as his assistants or even served as his assistants. They were unemployed. They were essentially David's groupies and were doing nothing. And if David asked you to move your car, you would most likely comply if you're essentially living off of him. Alright guys, just remember that. However, that's about all I have to offer you today. The fact that we weren't told who it is, which doesn't really help us at all, makes it both breaking and non-breaking news. However, I think it's crucial that this private investigator did a fantastic job and found the driver of this Tesla, since this should help the police solve the case. So, everyone, be careful. I hope you all had fun.